A former casino floor manager just revealed something that could change the way you think about slot machines forever. After 15 years watching players from behind the scenes, she's breaking her silence about specific machines with what she calls predatory programming. What she's about to share could save you hundreds or even thousands of dollars, because the truth is, casinos deliberately place these machines in high-traffic areas where you're most likely to see them. She's not alone in speaking out. Over 40 former casino employees have come forward with testimonies about 8 particular slot machines they say you should never touch. Machine number 6 has been banned in 3 states, and machine number 8 was specifically designed to target senior citizens using technology that pushes ethical boundaries. These aren't rumors or speculation. These are documented accounts from people who serviced these machines, programmed them, and watch players lose devastating amounts of money on them. Machine number 1 is Dragon Link, and it's Aristocrat Gaming's most profitable machine series for a reason that has nothing to do with player satisfaction. Former slot technicians report that the base game runs at approximately 88% return to player, which means for every $100 you feed into this machine, you're mathematically expected to get back $88. But here's what makes Dragon Link particularly insidious. The hold and spin feature that everyone chases triggers roughly once every 120 to 150 spins. A cocktail waitress named Sarah watched one of her regular customers systematically destroy his finances on this machine over 3 months. He started with $100 sessions on Friday nights. She'd bring him drinks and chat with him during her shifts, and he seemed like he had it under control. But Sarah noticed he started coming in on Wednesdays, then Tuesdays, then almost every night. He told her he'd hit a $1,500 bonus once and convinced himself he could do it again. By the time he stopped coming to the casino, he'd maxed out 3 credit cards totaling $17,000, chasing that same rush. What Sarah didn't know at the time, but learned later from a slot technician, is that Dragon Link uses near-miss programming on those pearl symbols. The machine is designed to show you almost getting the bonus far more frequently than random chance would dictate. You'll see 5 pearls when you need 6, or pearls landing just above and below the pay line, creating the psychological sensation that you're constantly close to winning. Former slot technicians explain that the actual hit frequency and the perceived hit frequency are deliberately mismatched. Your brain interprets those near misses as evidence that you're about to win, which triggers the same anticipation response as an actual win. This creates what behavioral psychologists call the sunk cost fallacy in real time. You've already spent $80 trying to trigger the bonus, so walking away feels like wasting that investment. The machine knows this, or rather, the people who programmed it know this. And if you think Dragon Link is bad, machine number 2 uses the exact same psychology, but with even worse odds. Lightning Link is Dragon Link's evil twin, manufactured by the same company, Aristocrat Gaming. The return to player on Lightning Link sits between 86 and 88%, according to internal data from former technicians, and the hold and spin feature triggers roughly every 100 to 130 spins. That sounds more frequent than Dragon Link, but here's the catch. It pays significantly less when it hits. Marcus worked casino security for 7 years, and he'll never forget watching a man spend his wife's medical fund on Lightning Link. The player had come in with a check for $12,000, money his wife had saved for a necessary surgery. Marcus saw him cash the check at the cage, watched him sit down at a Lightning Link machine near the main entrance, and observed that $12,000 vanished over the course of 6 hours. What makes Lightning Link especially dangerous is the rapid spin feature that creates an illusion of action and momentum. The reels spin faster than most machines, and the sound design is engineered to mimic winning patterns even when you're losing. You'll hear celebration sounds, chimes, and musical flourishes on spins that result in net losses. Your bet was $3, you won $2.40, but the machine celebrates like you hit a jackpot. This auditory manipulation bypasses your rational mind and speaks directly to your reward centers. Marcus said he felt sick watching elderly players pump money into these machines, knowing they were being manipulated by sound design and visual trickery. Multiple floor supervisors reported the same guilt, describing how they'd see the same faces week after week, watching people who clearly couldn't afford to lose getting psychologically trapped by machines designed to exploit human cognition. But wait until you hear about machine number 3. Multiple former employees called it the Widowmaker, and when you hear the stories behind that nickname, you'll understand why some casino workers couldn't sleep at night. Machine number 3 is Buffalo Grand, and there's a reason Las Vegas casino employees privately call it the Widowmaker. This is aristocrat gaming's high-denomination beast, and former pit bosses describe it with a mixture of professional detachment and genuine horror. The return to the player sits between 85 and 87% on the dollar denomination, which is brutally low for the amount of money you're expected to wager. The free games feature triggers approximately once every 200 to 250 spins, and when you're betting $5 or more per spin, that wait costs real money fast. A former pit boss named David shares 3 separate incidents he personally witnessed of retirees losing 5-figure amounts in single sessions on this machine. But one story haunts him more than the others. Robert was a 68-year-old veteran who'd recently received his deceased wife's life insurance payout, $43,000 that was supposed to fund his retirement. David watched Robert discover Buffalo Grand on a Tuesday afternoon. The machine sits in a prime location near the main casino entrance, positioned so you can't help but see it, can't help but hear the buffalo sounds and dramatic music when someone triggers the bonus. Robert started on the quarter denomination that first day, and David said he seemed fine, seemed like he was just entertaining himself for a few hours. But Robert came back Wednesday on the dollar denomination, then Thursday, then Friday. David describes reviewing the player tracking data 2 weeks later and feeling his stomach drop. Robert had been there every single day, sometimes for 8 or 10 hours, systematically feeding that life insurance money into Buffalo Grand. The total loss was $43,000 over 14 days. What makes Buffalo Grand so devastating is the combination of high denomination, low return to player, and extreme volatility. The machine is programmed to make you wait extended periods for the bonus, and when that bonus finally hits, it usually pays between 50 and 200 times your bet. That sounds significant until you calculate how much you spent waiting for it. If you're betting $5 per spin and the bonus triggers every 220 spins on average, you've spent $1,100 to get there. A $100 bonus win feels exciting in the moment, but you're down $1,000 overall. The psychological manipulation goes deeper than just mathematics, though. The machine uses what's called grand branding, the word grand in the title suggesting bigger wins, premium experiences, something special. The celebration sounds play even on net loss bonus rounds. So you trigger free games, watch Buffalo stampede across the screen, hear triumphant music, win $80, and feel like you've accomplished something, completely forgetting you spent $300 in the last hour trying to get there. David describes finding internal casino documents that specifically discussed Buffalo Grand placement strategy. The machine was deliberately positioned near entrances and ATMs because foot traffic analysis showed these locations generated the highest revenue. Casino executives knew exactly what they were doing, and floor staff like David were expected to encourage play on these machines despite knowing the mathematics. 3 former employees independently describe attempting to warn players away from Buffalo Grand, gently suggesting they try different machines with better odds, only to be reprimanded by management for interfering with customer choice. One former slot attendant said she'd see the same elderly faces week after week on Buffalo Grand, watch their excitement gradually transform into desperation, observe them checking their wallets more frequently, making more trips to the ATM, staying later into the night. She quit after 2 years because she couldn't stand feeling complicit anymore. Before I reveal machine number 4, I need to ask for your help spreading awareness about these predatory machines. If you subscribe to this channel, it helps me reach more people with information that casinos don't want widely known. And let me know in the comments, have you ever seen someone lose a devastating amount on any of these machines? Or have you experienced these psychological tactics yourself? We're only halfway through this list, and machine number 6 is going to shock you when you learn why 3 states banned it entirely. Machine number 4 is Wheel of Fortune 4D, and speaking of machines designed for high-denomination play that disguise themselves as fun entertainment, this is IGT's premium product. You've seen it in every major casino, the giant wheel mounted above the machine, the familiar theme music from the television show, the colorful graphics that make it feel more like a game show than gambling. But that friendly exterior masks some brutal mathematics. The return to the player sits between 88 and 90% depending on denomination, which sounds reasonable until you understand what that means at 4 times the normal bet. The 4D designation means you're betting 4 credits per line instead of 1, so a penny machine becomes a 4-cent machine, a quarter machine becomes a dollar machine, and suddenly you're wagering $20 or $40 or $80 per spin. The wheel spin bonus triggers approximately once every 180 to 220 spins, and while that bonus wheel looks exciting, spinning above your head with its bright lights and celebration sounds, the actual payout usually doesn't justify the money you spent getting there. Jennifer was part of a bachelorette party that stopped at a Las Vegas casino for what was supposed to be 2 hours of fun. She sat down at Wheel of Fortune 4D with $800, money she'd budgeted for the entire weekend, including her hotel, meals, and the wedding gift. 4 hours later, she'd lost $3,800, including everything in her checking account that she accessed through the casino ATM. She missed the bachelorette dinner. She missed the show they'd planned to see. She sat at that machine completely transfixed, chasing the wheel spin bonus, convinced the next spin would recover her losses. What makes Wheel of Fortune 4D particularly deceptive is how that branded familiarity creates false trust in your mind. You've watched the television show. You associate those sounds and colors with entertainment and winning, and that emotional connection overrides rational assessment of mathematics. The machine exploits your nostalgia and positive associations, turning cultural touchstones into psychological vulnerabilities. The wheel spin itself creates what gambling researchers call the illusion of skill or control. You press the button, the wheel spins, and even though the outcome was determined the millisecond you touched that button, watching the wheel slow down and land on a value makes you feel like you participated in the result somehow. Meanwhile, you're bleeding money at an average rate of $2.40 per spin on 88% return to player at $20 bets, and those small bonuses of $30 or $60 feel meaningful because the machine celebrates them with such intensity, but they're not even recovering what you've lost in the previous 30 minutes. A former game designer who worked on slot machine development described the intentional excitement engineering that goes into machines like Wheel of Fortune. Every sound, every visual flourish, every timing element is tested and refined to maximize what the industry calls time on device. They're not trying to make the experience enjoyable in any meaningful sense. They're trying to keep you in the seat as long as possible, and every celebration sounds like a net loss spin, Every near miss on the wheel landing one position away from the top prize, every small bonus that feels significant but mathematically isn't, all of it serves that single purpose. Now you might think branded games represent the worst of predatory design, but machine number 5 takes a beloved classic aesthetic and weaponizes pure nostalgia in ways that target an entire generation of players. Golden Egypt is IGT's masterclass in deception, a machine that looks like the classic slots older players remember from decades ago, but plays with thoroughly modern predatory programming. The return to player sits between 85 and 88%, which is extremely low, and the free spin bonus triggers approximately once every 250 to 300 spins. The Egyptian theme attracts players who came of age during the golden era of Las Vegas, people who remember when slot machines felt simpler, more honest, more winnable. Those players see the hieroglyphics and pyramids and scarab symbols and feel transported back to a time when they believed casino gambling was just entertainment. But that nostalgic aesthetic is camouflage for some of the most frustrating mathematics in modern slot design. Remember Frank, the 62-year-old retiree whose story was mentioned earlier? His complete financial destruction happened in Golden Egypt over the course of 6 months. Frank had a $500 weekly entertainment budget when he discovered this machine, money he felt comfortable losing as the cost of a hobby. The first month he stayed within budget, winning some sessions, losing others, feeling like the machine was fair. The second month, his weekly budget crept to $800 because he'd had a bad week and wanted to recover. By month 3, he was spending $2,000 weekly, pulling from savings he'd promised his wife he wouldn't touch. Month 4. He opened a home equity line of credit, telling himself he'd hit a big bonus and pay it back before she noticed. Month 6, he'd lost $78,000, including $40,000 from that home equity line, and his marriage was in crisis. The former casino host who watched Frank's decline describes feeling powerless to intervene, wanting to pull him aside and tell him the truth about the machine's programming, knowing he'd be fired instantly if management discovered he was discouraging play. What makes Golden Egypt so insidious is that bonus structure designed for maximum frustration. You wait 270 spins on average to trigger free games. You've spent hundreds of dollars getting there, and then the bonus pays 30 or 40 times your bet, maybe $120 on a $3 bet, and you feel disappointed, almost cheated, because you waited so long and the machine's excitement suggested something bigger was coming. That disappointment doesn't make you walk away, though. It makes you chase harder, convinced the next bonus will be the meaningful one, the one that justifies all this waiting. The hieroglyphic symbols use near-miss programming, just like Dragon Link's pearls, showing you almost completing the bonus pattern far more often than true randomness would produce. You'll see 4 scarabs when you need 5, or the 5th scarab landing just off the pay line, and your brain interprets that as being close, as having almost won, as evidence you should keep playing. Multiple former employees describe Golden Egypt as morally questionable in ways that kept them awake at night, watching older players chase nostalgic feelings while modern algorithms systematically extracted their retirement funds. And if you think that level of deception is shocking, wait until you hear about machine number 6, a slot machine so controversial that 3 states actually banned it. And when you learn what it does to your brain, you'll understand why regulators finally had to intervene. Machine number 7 is called 88 Fortunes, and multiple former employees describe this as scientific game's calculated exercise in what one floor manager explicitly called cultural exploitation. This machine represents something more deliberately predatory than aggressive mathematics or psychological manipulation, because 88 Fortunes was specifically engineered to target Asian gambling culture and the deeply held superstitions that come with it. Former slot technicians report a base game return to player between 86 and 88%, with the progressive feature triggering approximately once every 150 to 200 spins. But the real story isn't in those numbers. The real story is in how this machine was designed from the ground up to exploit cultural beliefs about luck and fortune. The number 8 is considered profoundly lucky in Chinese culture, representing prosperity and good fortune, so the double 8 in the title isn't accidental or arbitrary. It's weaponized symbolism. The entire visual design employs red and gold, colors that carry deep cultural significance in Asian communities, colors associated with celebration and wealth and auspicious occasions. Every symbol on the reels draws from Chinese prosperity imagery, the Fu Dao Lei characters, the golden coins, the dragons and lanterns, all of it calculated to create the feeling that this machine understands and honors your cultural background. A former floor manager describes internal meetings where casino executives explicitly discussed placement strategy for 88 fortunes, identifying areas of the casino floor with high Asian American foot traffic and positioning these machines accordingly. They analyzed player tracking data by demographic, studied betting patterns within specific cultural communities, and optimized the game's location to maximize revenue from the exact population it was designed to target. What makes this culturally targeted design so predatory is how it transforms exploitation into something that feels like respect or recognition. Players from Asian backgrounds see this machine and feel a sense of cultural familiarity in an environment that often feels alien or unwelcoming. The machine seems to speak their language, literally and symbolically, and that emotional connection overrides rational assessment of the underlying mathematics. The progressive structure creates its own trap, independent of cultural manipulation. There are 4 progressive levels: mini, minor, major, and grand, displayed prominently above the machine, constantly visible, constantly reminding you of potential wins that feel tantalizingly close. The mini progressive hits frequently, every 30 or 40 spins, paying $12 or $20, establishing a pattern in your mind that these progressives actually hit regularly. The minor hits occasionally, maybe every 200 spins, paying $80 or $150, reinforcing your belief that the pattern continues upward. But the major progressive, the one that pays $800 or $2,000, hits roughly every 1,500 to 2,500 spins, according to former technicians who serviced these machines. And the grand progressive, the one displaying $4,000 or $6,000 depending on denomination, hits approximately every 15,000 to 25,000 spins. Your brain sees the mini hit, sees the minor hit, and constructs a narrative where you're climbing a ladder, where the major and grand are just a matter of time and persistence. You're not climbing anything. You're watching a carefully constructed illusion designed to keep you feeding money into a machine that mathematically guarantees you'll lose. The most devastating case study involving 88 fortunes comes from a former card dealer named Lisa, who knew a 71-year-old grandmother named Wei. Wei had immigrated to the United States late in life to be near her family after her husband passed away, bringing with her the life insurance money that was supposed to fund her remaining years, $85,000 that represented her entire financial security. Wei discovered 88 fortunes 6 months after arriving, and Lisa watched her transformation from occasional player to someone consumed by the belief that this machine was lucky because of its cultural symbols, because of the 8s, because everything about it felt like it was made for her specifically. Wei believed she understood this machine in ways other players couldn't, that her cultural knowledge gave her insight into when the progressives would hit, that her good fortune was connected to these symbols that reminded her of home. Over 8 months, she methodically fed that entire life insurance payout into 88 fortunes, $85,000 disappearing $200 or $500 at a time. her family completely, unaware until Wei asked her grandson for a loan she desperately needed. Lisa describes crying in the employee break room after seeing Wei at her regular machine late one Thursday night, knowing the woman had already lost everything, knowing she'd keep playing anyway because the machine had created such a powerful emotional connection that transcended rational thought. 3 different former employees described similar stories: elderly Asian players who formed attachments to 88 fortunes that went beyond typical gambling behavior, who talked about the machine like it was a cultural touchstone or connection to heritage, who genuinely believed their understanding of lucky numbers and auspicious symbols gave them an advantage. Floor supervisors describe feeling complicit in something that crossed ethical lines in ways other predatory machines didn't, because this wasn't just exploiting mathematical ignorance or psychological vulnerabilities. This was deliberately targeting cultural identity and turning deeply held beliefs into a profit extraction mechanism. A former marketing manager describes sitting in strategy meetings where the Asian American demographic was explicitly discussed as a high-value target market, where executives reviewed data showing 88 fortunes generated disproportionate revenue from Asian American players, where that disproportion was celebrated as evidence the cultural targeting was working exactly as intended. Casino revenue reports obtained by former employees show 88 fortunes consistently outperformed similar machines in locations with significant Asian American populations, while underperforming in demographics where the cultural symbolism held no meaning. The psychological manipulation operates on multiple levels simultaneously: the cultural symbolism creating emotional investment, the progressive display generating the perpetual feeling of almost winning, the celebration sounds conditioning players every time a mini or minor progressive hits, and the 243 ways pays format producing frequent small wins that never actually recover your bet amount but feel like the machine is being generous. Multiple former employees specifically cite 88 fortunes when explaining why they eventually left casino employment, describing an inability to reconcile their complicity in what felt like systematic cultural exploitation with their personal ethics. And now for the final machine on this list, and I need you to understand that former employees describe this one as representing the future of predatory gambling design, a future where machines don't just use psychological manipulation, but actually learn from your behavior and adjust their presentation accordingly. Several employees admitted they quit rather than continue servicing this machine because what it does feels like it should be illegal, even though technically it isn't. And when you hear how this technology works and who it targets most effectively, you'll understand why some former casino workers compare it to drug dealing. Machine number 8 is Cash Eruption Extreme, and this is where IGT's engineering team crossed into territory that made multiple former employees question whether they could continue working in the casino industry. What separates this machine from everything we've discussed isn't just the mathematics or the psychological manipulation, though it has plenty of both, with a return to player between 87 and 89% that varies based on factors most players never consider. What makes Cash Eruption Extreme different? What makes it represent the future that terrifies former casino workers is how it integrates with player tracking systems in ways that push far beyond anything previous generations of slot machines attempted. This isn't a machine that simply takes your money through predetermined programming. This is a machine that recognizes who you are, remembers how you play, and adjusts its behavioral presentation to maximize the time you spend in that seat feeding it money. The technology works through the player card system that casinos have convinced you is just for earning complimentary rewards and free play. When you insert your card into Cash Eruption Extreme, the machine instantly accesses your player profile, your tier status, your historical betting patterns, your win-loss record, your average session length, everything the casino has compiled about your gambling behavior. A former game developer who worked on this integration technology describes it carefully, emphasizing that the machine doesn't change the actual return-to-player percentages because that would be illegal, but it absolutely changes the experience presentation to maximize what internal documents call time on device. For a casual player with a low-tier card, someone who visits occasionally and plays modest amounts, Cash Eruption Extreme runs what employees called the smooth experience protocol. Bonuses trigger more frequently, but pay smaller amounts. The volatility feels manageable. Wins and losses balance in ways that feel almost fair, and the overall experience creates the impression of fun entertainment rather than systematic extraction. But insert a high-value player card, someone the casino has identified as a significant revenue source, and the machine shifts into a completely different presentation mode. The volatility perception increases, the tease features become more aggressive, larger potential wins dangle just out of reach more frequently, and the machine begins targeting the specific psychological triggers that your player history has revealed as most effective for keeping you engaged. The truly disturbing aspect emerges when a player approaches their loss limit, that threshold the casino has calculated based on your financial profile and historical behavior. Former slot directors describe something called the comfort bonus, though that term never appears in official documentation, when the system detects you're close to your typical stop point, whether that's a dollar amount or a time duration. Cash Eruption Extreme may trigger a moderate bonus, something large enough to feel meaningful, but small enough that you haven't actually recovered your session losses. That perfectly timed win provides just enough encouragement to push past your usual stopping point, to keep playing through the mental barrier you'd normally respect, and the machine knows to do this because it's learned from dozens or hundreds of your previous sessions exactly when that intervention will be most effective. Dorothy was 78 years old when she became what casino hosts internally called a platinum regular, someone whose tracked play history revealed both significant financial resources and reliable weekly attendance. She came to the casino every Tuesday afternoon between 2 and 6, spending an average of $800 per session, and over 14 months, she lost $127,000, with Cash Eruption Extreme becoming her preferred machine during the final 6 months of that period. The former casino host who managed Dorothy's account describes reviewing her player tracking data and seeing bonus timing that seemed almost too perfectly calibrated to keep her playing. The machine would let her lose for extended periods, building frustration and determination, then deliver a $500 hit right when her historical data suggested she'd normally cash out and leave. Dorothy eventually spent a portion of the reverse mortgage money she'd taken on her home, funds her children knew nothing about until much later. The host quit after a supervisor meeting where Dorothy was specifically identified as a high-value player who should not be discouraged from her preferred machine, where her loyalty to Cash Eruption Extreme was discussed as something to nurture and protect because it generated such consistent revenue. Multiple former employees describe Cash Eruption Extreme using terms like the algorithm machine, explaining that while every slot machine runs on algorithms, this one felt different because it was actively responding to who was playing it. A former slot technician describes feeling wrong every time he serviced these machines, knowing they were designed to learn from player vulnerability and exploit that knowledge systematically. A former floor manager admits that upper management celebrated Cash Eruption Extreme's performance metrics, while floor staff who actually interacted with players grew increasingly uncomfortable with what they were watching. One former compliance officer raised explicit concerns about how these machines seemed to target elderly players with particular effectiveness, noting that the demographic data showed disproportionate revenue generation from senior citizens, only to be told that everything the machine did was perfectly legal because the base return to player percentages remained constant regardless of who was playing. What makes this technology represent the future that employees fear isn't just that one machine or one manufacturer, it's the industry trend toward artificial intelligence-assisted player engagement optimization, toward machines that don't just run predetermined programs, but actually learn and adapt based on who's sitting in front of them. Former game designers describe the development pipeline, explaining that new slot machines are being engineered with increasingly sophisticated behavioral tracking capabilities that within 5 years, most machines on casino floors will have some version of this adaptive technology, that the integration between player tracking systems and game presentation will become so seamless that players won't even realize the machine is responding specifically to their psychological profile. These former employees didn't risk violating non-disclosure agreements and potentially facing legal consequences because they wanted attention or revenge against former employers. They came forward because they believe someone outside the industry needs to understand what's coming, needs to know that the machines being installed right now are fundamentally different from anything that existed even 5 years ago. Industry reports that several former employees provided show player tracking integration has increased by 340% in just the past 3 years, with every major manufacturer developing proprietary systems for connecting player data to game presentation and the return to player percentages everyone focuses on have become almost meaningless compared to the behavioral manipulation these adaptive systems enable. So let's review everything these 40 former casino employees risked their careers to reveal. DragonLink, with its 88% return to player and hold and spin trap that uses near-miss programming on those pearl symbols to keep you chasing bonuses that trigger every 120 to 150 spins. Lightning Link, DragonLink's worst twin, running between 86 and 88%, returns to the player with that rapid spin illusion, making you feel like you're getting more action when you're actually just losing faster. Buffalo Grand, the Widowmaker itself, sitting at 85 to 87% return to players on high denominations, making you wait 200 to 250 spins for bonuses while bleeding $5 or $10 per spin. Wheel of Fortune 4D, hiding behind familiar branding while charging you 4 times the normal bet for 88 to 90% return to player that sounds reasonable until you calculate what you're actually wagering per spin. Golden Egypt, the nostalgia trap running 85 to 88% return to player, making you wait 250 to 300 spins for free games that rarely justify the money you spent getting there. Vegas Hits, banned in 3 states because its losses disguised as wins programming at 86% return to players was so aggressive that state regulators actually had to intervene. 88 Fortunes, engineered specifically to exploit cultural beliefs and superstitions, running 86 to 88% return to players while targeting Asian American communities with weaponized symbolism and progressive structures designed to feel culturally meaningful. And Cash Eruption Extreme, the behavioral targeting machine that integrates with player tracking systems to adjust its presentation based on who you are and how you play, represents the artificial intelligence-assisted future that made employees quit rather than remain complicit. Notice the pattern connecting all 8 machines. Every single one runs below 90% return to player, which means even the best option on this list guarantees you're losing at least $10 for every $100 you wager over time. Every single one employs sophisticated psychological manipulation designed by teams of behavioral scientists and game developers who understand human cognition better than most players understand themselves. Every single one targets vulnerable populations, whether that's elderly players with retirement funds, cultural communities with specific superstitions, or high-value customers whose player tracking data reveals exactly which buttons to push. These aren't just statistics on a screen or abstract percentages in a regulatory filing. Sarah watched her regular customer max out $17,000 in credit cards on DragonLink. Marcus witnessed a man spend his wife's $12,000 medical fund on Lightning Link in 6 hours. David reviewed player tracking data showing Robert lost $43,000 of life insurance money on Buffalo Grand in just 14 days. Jennifer turned an $800 weekend budget into a $3,800 catastrophe on Wheel of Fortune 4D in one afternoon. Frank systematically destroyed his marriage and lost $78,000, including home equity, on Golden Egypt over 6 months. Michelle watched a regular player lose $22,000 on Vegas hits without even realizing she was losing because the machine celebrated constantly. Lisa cried in the break room after seeing Wei feed $85,000 of life insurance money into 88 fortunes because the cultural symbols made her believe the machine was lucky. Dorothy lost $127,000, including reverse mortgage money, on Cash Eruption Extreme, while the machine learned her patterns and adjusted its timing to keep her playing past her normal limits. That's over $365,000 in documented losses across just 8 individual cases, 8 real people whose lives were fundamentally changed by machines that 40 former employees felt morally obligated to warn you about. These casino workers didn't come forward seeking attention or revenge. They spoke out because they watched these scenarios play out hundreds of times, because they couldn't stay silent anymore after years of feeling complicit in systematic exploitation, because some of them still have nightmares about players they couldn't help and shouldn't have been put in position to watch suffer. One former floor manager described lying awake at 3 a.m. thinking about the elderly woman who came in every Thursday, about the young father who was clearly hiding his gambling from his family, about the retired veteran who kept playing long after it stopped being entertainment and became something else entirely. All of this is completely legal. Every machine discussed in this video operates within regulatory frameworks, meets technical standards, and passes compliance reviews. The mathematics are disclosed, even if most players don't understand them. Psychological manipulation is considered acceptable business practice. The behavioral tracking and adaptive presentation technologies are celebrated as innovation. And as we saw with Cash Eruption Extreme, the industry is moving toward even more sophisticated systems that will make these 8 machines look primitive by comparison. But now, you have information that casinos spent millions developing strategies to keep from you. You understand the mathematics behind the flashing lights and celebration sounds. You recognize the psychological manipulation tactics these machines employ. You know which specific models represent the worst combination of low return to player, high volatility, and predatory design. If you choose to play slots, you're equipped to avoid the machines that former employees identified as most dangerous. This isn't about telling you never to gamble. This is about providing the information you need to make actually informed decisions rather than decisions shaped by environmental psychology and behavioral engineering. As one former slot director explained it, the house always wins in the long run, but some machines make that run devastatingly short. If this information changed how you think about slot machines, subscribe to help this reach more people who need to know what casino insiders know. Share this with anyone you know who plays slots, because this information could literally save them thousands of dollars and prevent the kind of financial devastation we've documented throughout this video. Let me know in the comments whether you've played any of these 8 machines and whether you recognize the psychological tactics we discussed, and if you're a current or former casino employee with insider knowledge about other machines or practices, reach out because these stories need to be told. I'm currently working on a follow-up video about what table games dealers wish players understood about house edge and betting systems, so stay tuned for that. Remember that these warnings came directly from people who serviced these machines, programmed them, watched them operate for years, and ultimately couldn't reconcile their participation with their personal ethics. They know exactly what you're up against when you sit down at these machines, and now you know too.